All right, shalom aleichem, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday class. Yalkut Yosef, דיני השכמת הבוקר, the proper way for a Jew to wake up in the morning. We recently spoke about how we have to fight the Yetzer Hara in the morning, how important it is to learn Torah at night. If you remember, Giacomo pointed out that the Peleitz always talks about that. It's a big thing, learning Torah at night. Today, we're going to touch a little bit more of that and continue in the halachot of waking up in the morning. All right. הלומד תורה בלילה עד שעה מאוחרת, whoever learns Torah at night until a late hour, ובשל כך קיים ספק אם יוכל לקום להתפלל קודם שיעבור זמן קריאת שמע, and because of that, he's learning Torah at night and it's very important, but because of that, he may wake up too late to read Shema on time. I hope you all remember what it means when we say Shema on time, right? When we divided the day into 12 hours, the third hour of the day is Shema on time. If you remember, last time we spoke about this, Baruch haba Yigal. Last time we spoke about this, Nick Hakimi was here. He pointed out that there are two times of Kriyat Shema. There's the more strict opinion and the more lenient opinion. We'll see it right now. He's going to talk about it. All right. ויסדר זמן ללימודו באופן שלא יאחר זמן אחר קריאת שמע. He says, so if that's the case, it's not worth it. It's better you stop your learning at night. Find a time to learn that it won't make you too late to read Shema on time in the morning, because reading Shema on time in the morning is a mitzvah from the Torah, as opposed to the rest of the tefillah is from the Rabbanan. But the mitzvah of Shema on time is from the Torah, therefore be careful. אבל אם אינו ישן ועוסק בלימוד התורה, ועקב כך יבטל רק תפילה בהנצח אמר, רשאי לנהוג כן. All right, but if he's learning Torah, and he's not going to miss Shema on time, but he is going to miss something else that is important, which we haven't necessarily touched yet. Praying in the nets. Praying in the nets is a big deal. A lot of the Kabbalistic Sfardim, to them, if they don't pray in the nets, the day is like not, how it's supposed to be. Lahalacha, it's not a must. You don't have to pray in the nets. It's a minhag vatikim. It's a very good custom that the tzaddikim take it upon themselves. However, between you and me, I'll tell you that even Rav Ovadia Yosef, he did not wake up in the morning for the nets to pray. Right? The nets is exactly saying Shemona Esrei, exactly in the moment that the sun comes out. There's a big deal. There's a pasuk, Yira'ucha im shamesh. You should be seen with the sun, meaning the second the sun is out to pray. But the Rav Ovadia and his son, Yalkut Yosef, which we are learning his book from, points out that even though that is important, but it is more important to learn Torah at night. So if you're learning until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, which was what Rav Ovadia Zecher Tzadik Livracha used to do, that's how Rav Yalkut Yosef talks about his father like that. He says, this is what my father did. It was more important to him to go, so he went to the 7:30 minyan, but he was learning until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But did he ever miss Shema on time? Nah, Shema on time, you're not allowed to miss. So that's the red line. Baruch haba Marcel. All right. So you're allowed to stay up and learn late, and even midst the nets, which, again, it's not such a, it should be more common, but it's not such a common thing. I think in our community we have maybe 10, 12 minyanim. Maybe one of them is somewhat of a netz, but it's not really a netz. It's a steady time. A netz, those that pray a netz, all year long, they're looking at the clock, because every day the netz is a minute later, 2 minutes later, 3 minutes. So they always have to be alert to the time. They're living with time. Right. So now he points something else. If he's learning till late, and he will wake up late because of that, but he will only miss the time according to the Magen Avraham. We gave an example back then. What is the right time to read Kriyat Shema? Up to 3 hours of the day. So if the sun rises at 6, 3 hours would be 9. But we brought two opinions that calculate the 3 hours of the day differently. Some calculate from dawn, some calculate from sunrise. So let's say the more strict opinion would be the Magen Avraham, which he says Kriyat Shema is only until 9 o'clock. The Gaon Mivina calculates differently and says, no, Kriyat Shema could be until 9:30. By the way, Rav Ben Chaim always likes Rav Gaon Mivina's opinion more. But the 9:30, he says that's according to the Torah. So if because I'm learning Torah until a late hour, I will miss the 9 o'clock on time, but I'll still make it to the 9:30, he says. You know what he's saying? He's pointing out that half an hour. If it's going to fall in the middle, it's still okay. It was worth it, he says, to stay up late learning Torah. So that now, I know most of us think, how will it happen today that we're going to stay up so late, that we're going to miss Shema on time? Baruch Hashem, everybody here goes to his minyan in the morning and doesn't miss it. But theoretically, sometimes we learn halakha just to understand what the importance of it is. So we get from here how important it is to learn Torah at night, that even if you miss Kriyat Shema, which is a mitzvah from the Torah, on time according to the more strict opinion. As long as you have the lenient opinion, it's worth it so that you can learn more Torah at night. All right. It says, whoever is lenient like this, he has what to rely on. And don't fear of Chilul Hashem. Don't think people are going to look at you and say, why is this guy is coming at 9:15 for a minyan? Don't worry about that, he says. If you were up night learning Torah, it's okay. You have what to rely on. He says, however, but if you're not the type of person that is occupying yourself with learning until late at night, mitzvah mina muvchar. It's a very, it's hard to give a ranking to mitzvot, but we have a mitzvah, and we have a mitzvah mina muvchar. A mitzvah is what I'm obligated to do. Mitzvah mina muvchar is when it's above my obligation. It's a high status. It's not what I'm obligated to do. So he says here, if you're not that person that is staying up until night to learn, late until in the middle of the night to learn Torah, then it's a mitzvah mina muvchar. It's an elevated mitzvah. It's more worthy to try to wake up early in that time. All right. Einik, Baruch haba, Ilan, Baruch haba, Giacomo, Baruch haba. All right. So that was from the Yalkut Yosef. Now, I marked some comments that I want to share with you that he wrote in here. He wrote a comment from the Kaf HaChaim. And the Kaf HaChaim writes, שטוב שעה אחת קודם אור היום לעסוק בתורה מכמה שעות ביום. This is an amazing equation. He gives us a math equation. He says, if you're going to have a few hours of Torah being learned during the day while the sun is out, or you're going to have 1 hour before sunrise, it says take the 1 hour and before sunrise. It's better than a few hours after the sun is out. What are his sources? Where did he bring it from? This is the Kaf HaChaim. We accept. Just again, the emphasis of learning while it's still dark outside. This is what the Kaf HaChaim brings. Now I'm going to bring you something from the Tosafot. As you know, we have Shas, the Mishnayot. On the Mishnayot, there's Gemara. On the Gemara, we have commentaries. We have the most common commentary, which is Rashi, just like all over the Torah, we have Rashi, all over the Tanakh. And on the other side of the Gemara, we have someone called the Tosfot. Tosfot is not one person. Tosfot is, it began with the grandchildren of Rashi, but there are many, many different names, hundreds of different names inside the Tosafot of different rabbis that gave interpretations to the Gemara. So this is something brought by the Tosfot. They say, we have a question for you. They wrote like this. There was a queen, right? This is from the times of the Greek. There was a queen amongst the Jewish people called Hilenia Malka. She made a chandelier of gold. Right? What was special about this chandelier? Back then, there was no alarm clock. How do you know that it's sunrise? How do you know that it's time to start the day? She made a special chandelier. I guess she had a special home where the light could come in. And as the sun would rise, it would catch this chandelier and it would shoot up the house with light. So that basically, through this chandelier, you could know that right now is sunrise. And the language is, sparkles would go flying out of the chandelier. And this is how they knew, all right, sunrise just happened. And that's when they would read Kiryat Shema. That's the story. So what do we learn from here? The sun came, it woke everybody up, and they read Shema. And the Gemara explained that this was for all of the people in Jerusalem. So what's the question? What's the question that's going to bother us now? We understand that the Kiryat Shema was being done in Yerushalayim after sunrise. Now, why is that a problem? Because if you expect people to daven Shemoneh Esrei exactly at sunrise, what does it mean about Shema? When are we reading Shema? We're reading Shema a few minutes before sunrise. That's what people today do. When they go to the Nets minyan, you're reading Kriyat Shema before the sun is out. When you get to Shemoneh Esrei, when you get to Amidah, that's the time the sun is out. So he says, you're asking us to read every day, to wake up in the Nets, to read Shema before the sun is out. But we see from this story with the chandelier that only when sunrise happened, they would read Shema, and after that, Shemoneh Esrei. So what's the right way to do it? So the Tosfot gave an excuse. He says, no, the story that those that had the chandelier and they would read Shema when the sun came out instead of doing already the Amidah, that's for those that did not have the ability, that weren't able to know and understand when sunrise is happening. So this is what they had. So right when they saw the light, they began their day. But for us, that we are able to know when sunrise is, then we're able to read Shema. So it's definitely okay to read Shema before sunrise. Don't learn from that you're not allowed to read Shema before sunrise. Of course you are. This is By the way, this is a common way that the Tosfot works. The Tosfot, when he hears a certain opinion in the Gemara, Rashi usually explains on the spot. The way of the Tosfot is, hey, we saw a different Gemara, a different story that told us like this. How do we make it match? Right, the Tosfot, there's so many different rabbis in there, and they all span it through the entire Shas, entire Tanakh, everything is in there. And then they come and say, this doesn't fit. Let's find a solution. So just to give us a little taste of the Tosfot. Another comment that I marked here to mention, this is what we mentioned before. We understand that reading Amidah in the nets is a mitzvah that is an elevated one, but it's not an obligation. The obligation is not to miss the time of tefillah. If the time of Kriyat Shema is at the 3rd hour, the time of the tefillah is up to the 4th hour, and that's our obligation. It's much better. It's an elevated mitzvah. If we could read it earlier, that would be mitzvah min hamuflar.
How do we know that Netz refers to the Amidah and not the Shema?
I hear your question, but the Gemara, I think, speaks about it. When the Pasuk says, Yira'ucha im shamesh, they would see you, Hashem, with the sun. So what does it mean to see you? The main part, we have to understand, the main part of the tefillah is the Amidah. That's what we're all waiting for. The fact that we have Kriyat Shema in there, we're also doing a mitzvah from the Torah of reading Shema on time. But when you talk about tefillah, meeting with Hashem, right? The Pasuk says you would meet Hashem in sunrise. The main meeting, when does it happen? Right? You have when you get to there, you have the hors d'oeuvres in the beginning and people are chatting. Then when the main show begins and the speaker goes on stage, so that's the Amidah. So when we see Hashem with the sun, that's what we're referring to, the actual most important part, which is the Amidah. This is my understanding. And therefore, all the poskim say that the tzaddikim, they would pray with a netz. Today, when we say pray, we think to ourselves, Baruch she'amar, asher yoshu betecha, korbanot, hodu, right? But really, when the Gemara talks about tefillah, the main, what it is the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah. That's the most important part. That's what's called tefillah. The rest, they call it mizmorim, chapters of Tehillim that we read before, Baruch Shema, etc. But the main part is the Shemona Esrei, and that's what usually is referred to.
If a person prays Netz, technically they're saying Shema before sunrise, we said. Do they need to repeat Shema after, similar to how someone who prays Arvit in the afternoon before sunset, he has to repeat it at night, he didn't fulfill his obligation. Is it similar or no?
Very good question. You're saying if the mitzvah of Shema is reading it once in the day, once in the night, if I'm reading it before sunrise, maybe it's considered that I didn't read it in the day. The answer is no. This is what's brought from the Tosfot here, that really the way that is ideal is actually to read it a little bit before sunrise, because don't forget that before sunrise we have 72 minutes of dawn where the influence of the sun is already starting to come out. Well, the next is the perfect time for Shemona Esrei. 2-3 minutes before reading Kriyat Shema is perfect. Of course, you do not have to repeat it, as opposed to early Arvit, like you just mentioned right now. All right, there are no more questions. We'll continue to the next letter, letter Chet. Now, now he's talking about the way you step out of your bed. You woke up in the morning, the alarm clock went off. How do we do it? We want to be good Jews. What's the proper way? He says, when you wake up, yamtin me'at. Don't be a person that jumps right out of bed. Be quick to serve your God. You have to be quick to serve God. But don't stand in a rushed way. A person wakes up, he jumps right out of bed. He says it's not healthy. I guess we could read research about this, but I heard once that that's the reason why we say Mודה. There was a research that said that ideally, before a person gets up out of bed, you should take 12 seconds or so. So the Chachamim said, Mודה is 12 words, and that's why we read Mודה lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, she'achzarta bi nishmati v'chama rabba emunatecha. 12 words, right? 4 times 3, 12. Once you said that, the time is up. Now you can get up, right? That's a good way of remembering it. He says, even though, even though, why am I rushing out of bed? I want to go to tefillah, I want to serve Hashem, I want to go to Bet Knesset, I want to learn Torah. Or any other mitzvah, he says here, even for that. Wait a little bit, and then get out of bed. It's not healthy. But he said, but he points out that the danger for health is specifically if you stand up. But if you get up and sit, that's okay. You don't have to stay laying down for those first seconds of the day. You could sit right up on your bed, but standing up, wait a little bit. ואינו עומד על רגליו, אלא נשאר יושב על מיטתו, אין בכך סכנה. Here, that's what he's saying right now. Sitting on your bed is okay. ועל כל פנים, על לשכב למיטה, ויפנה ליבו לבטלה. He says, but don't be that type of person that the alarm clock went off, and you say, okay, now I have to stay in bed, right? So you lay down, and then you flip from one side to the other side. He says, on that, Shlomo HaMelech said, Ad matai atzel tishkav. You lazy man, until when are you laying down? Matai takum mishnatcha, when are you gonna get up? וגדולי המקובלים היו נזהרים מלדבר דברי חול. He says, the big Kabbalists would be very careful to not even talk anything that is secular, anything that does not have to do with the tefillah or the Torah, until they started the zemirot of the tefillah, right? All the plakim that we just mentioned. Right? That's the mekubalim. That's a high level. But again, it shows importance. When a person wakes up in the morning and he says, you know, the first thing I'm going to do is serve Hashem, so he doesn't check his phone, he doesn't look at the newspaper. It's showing what's important to you and what's on the side. If the first thing you check is all the secular things, you're showing Hashem, that's more important. When I finish with that, I'm coming to you. But the mekubalim, what they would do, Hashem, we wake up to serve you. That's why we went to sleep. We wanted to wake up for tefillah. So you wake up, you're running to the Knesset. Once you walk out of shul, continue with your day, do whatever you need to do. But it's ideally, if you could avoid anything else before you do tefillah, then it's allowed. There's a question, and it's not right here, but I remember a question, what about kibud horim? There's a big mitzvah to respect your parents. Your mother tells you, honey, before you go to Kanisa, do you mind going to the grocery store and buying some milk? I want milk for my coffee. What do you say, guys? You go get the coffee, or first Hashem? What comes first? What do you guys say? Anybody want to try?
Hashem, definitely. Hashem.
Coffee. Get the coffee.
You say no to the wife.
No, I didn't say wife. I said mom.
Coffee.
Respect for their brother.
Okay, but we have a machloket here. Machloket of the achronim, Baruch Hashem. So the answer is that tefillah is a mitzvah, but it's a mitzvah from Chachamim. However, respecting our mother is a mitzvah from the Torah. Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. And therefore, even though it's going to push me away from first going into Kedusha, I do the mitzvah of respecting my mother and going buying her the coffee. By the way, we shouldn't think that we went against Hashem by doing that. That's the will of Hashem. Torah is beautiful. Torah is teaching
it's for the mother and the wife, or just the mother?
Oh, for the wife already, it's a kushiyah here. It's a kushiyah.
That's shalom bay.
See, I think Steve makes a valid point. I would say, I heard also regarding making sandwiches for your kids to school. That's already not a mother. But if that's what you need to do to send your children to school before your tefillah, it's not ideal. If you could find a way to do it before, is best. But if these are things that you need to do in order to start your day, to help your wife not do it, then of course it's a chesed. All these come under the category of non-secular things because you're doing it for the right reason. We're talking about someone that's opening a newspaper while he's having his coffee in the morning, or checking his phone. Why? Instead of with that coffee, open Yalkut Yosef, read a few more halachot. Why not that? That's the idea behind it. But Chazaku Baruch for the question, Sean. Baruch haba also. All right.
Thank you.
Let's see if there's another comment here. Okay. Listen to this. Miyad keshe'or mishnato, right when he wakes up in the morning, ya'id al atzmo emunato baboreh. Testify about yourself that you believe in God. How? Mודה ani lefanecha, etc. We all know the Mודה ani. It says, be careful to be mafsik ben teva bechemla tzeraba emunatecha. Mודה ani lefanecha, melech chai vekayam. I thank you, Hashem, dear King, that is long living, shehechzarta bi nishmati, that you returned my soul to me bechemla, with compassion. Stop there, bechemla. And then say, Rabba emunatecha, how much is the belief, all right? But after saying compassion, the compassion goes to how much Hashem has compassion to you. The compassion is not towards the belief, right? So just have that in mind. Shehechzarta bi nishmati bechemla, comma, Rabba emunatecha. That's the proper way to read it. He says, now what are we going to do? We wake up in the morning, our hands have something called ruach ra'ah. That's why we do netilat yadayim. Because the poskim say that when someone goes to sleep, you want to call it some sort of evil spirit, or whatever it is that the night brings, some sort of ruach ra'ah, some impurity that comes upon our hands, and therefore we have to wash our hands. So how are we saying some sort of tefillah when our hands are tameh? We know that if someone has to go to the bathroom, or if someone is dirty, not clean, he can't put on his tefillin, he can't read. So how are we saying Mודה ani? says, Afilu achi mודה אני mutar. Mודה ani is not a tefillah, there's no name of Hashem in there. It's just showing our emunah to Hashem, and therefore, even though you haven't washed your hands yet, you're allowed to say מודה אני. וגם אם יש לכלוך בחדר ואי אפשר לומר דברי תורה, אפילו אחי, and he says, even if there's a dirty diaper over there, right? We can't say any tefillah next to a dirty diaper. You have to put it in the garbage, move it out of the room, it stinks, it smells, whatever it is. Mודה ani is not under that category. Again, because there's no Hashem's name. That's where the problem begins. It says here that the man says Mודה ani, the woman says Moda ani, right? Male and female. Now he says, he brings something that the Mekubalim do as well. Yesh hamakpidim litol yadehem miyad im haketzah mishnatam. They are those that are particular in doing netilat yadayim right when they get out of bed. Have you seen this before? They leave a natlan of netilat yadayim on the floor with the bucket above it, because you're not allowed to leave water that is revealed overnight. It has to be covered. So they cover it with the bucket. Then when they wake up, they take off the bucket and they do netilah into the bucket while they're next to their bed. It's first to remove the tumah away from their hands. And after that, they continue to their day and they go to the bathroom. He says, מעיקר הדין על פי הגמרא, מותר ללבוש המלבושים קודם הנטילה וללכת להתפנות לצרכיו. Sorry, I skipped a line. קודם שילבשו מלבושיהם. And this they do, this netilah, he says, even before they have clothing on them. So how do you do this netilat yadayim? So he says, the Gemara says it's not a must. What these tzaddikim are doing, good for them, but according to the Gemara, it's perfectly fine that first we put on our clothing, and then we go to the bathroom, clear ourselves, so that we could do netilat yadayim with a beracha. He says, however, if you want to do what the Zohar says, yeah, that's what the Zohar says. Right when you get out of bed, do the netilat yadayim. However, this is a very important point. If you wake up in the morning and you have to go to the bathroom, you are not allowed to say a beracha. Once someone has to go to the bathroom and he can't hold it for over 72 minutes, which is most likely what happens when you wake up in the morning, how can you say a beracha? And even if you said it b'diavad, there's a question if it's yitzeh, so you don't say the beracha. So if you want to be particular like these tzaddikim that do the netilah right away, then do it, but don't say a beracha. Do it to remove the tumah away from your hands. And then go to the bathroom. Then when you leave the bathroom, do another netilah and then say the beracha. By the way, Rav Ovadia's system was not to say netilah right when he came out of bed for these reasons. That how could he do the beracha? He would get dressed. His family testifies. He would get dressed. He would go to the restroom, whatever it is. After that, he would go downstairs to the kitchen. You should know you can't do the netilat yadayim inside the bathroom because the bathroom is an impure place. Even though there's a contradiction about that, machloket, whether you can or you can't, because some say that the bathroom itself, once you're in there, you have to do a netilah when you leave it because it's a place of tumah. Some say like that. Others say no, back in the day it used to be a place of tumah because the toilets were exposed and everything was there. Today when you flush the toilet, nothing is there and therefore it's not tameh. We have a machloket on this. So ideally, don't do the netilat yadayim inside the bathroom. Where should you do it? Go to the kitchen, go to a sink outside of the bathroom. I know all of us say the beracha outside of the bathroom, but even the action itself, it's better that it's not in the bathroom. However, when you're on a plane, which happens a lot, you wake up from the night sleep, now they serve your breakfast, or you want to put on the tefillin on the plane, how are you going to do it? The only water that you could use is water in the bathroom. So the Chachamim say, okay, if that's what you have, do it. Lean on the opinion that the bathroom today, since it's removed from there, it's clean. But at home, it's ideal not to do the netilah inside the bathroom. Do it in the kitchen or somewhere that doesn't have tumah, so you could do the bracha while you're doing it. All right. Now, back to the commentaries that we have here. This is what I pointed out to talk about. דמה שהצריכו לומר עכשיו גם מודה אני, היינו רק כדי שההודעה תהיה מיד כשנאור משנתו. ובימיהם שהיו מברכים אלוהי הנשמה מיד כשנאור משנתם, מפני שהיו קדושים. This is why I found this important. He says, back in the day, they would also say, right when they come out of bed, Elokai neshama shenatata bi Torah, Hashem, thank you for returning my soul to me, right? And that ends with a bracha. אתה בכל זמן שהנשנה בקרבי מודה אני לפניך, המחזיר נשמות, ברוך אתה השם, המחזיר נשמות, returning the נשמות, לפגרים איתי, we were dead until now we're back to life. He says, how were they able to say it back in the day when they were still on their bed? Apparently, there's a source to that. Today we don't. We say Mודה ani, but we don't say that Elokai neshama. He says, why? Because back in the day, they were tzaddikim, they were pure enough to keep themselves in purity even throughout the night where the tum'ah didn't catch them. I don't know how, but the tum'ah didn't catch them. One of the reasons that we wash our hands in the morning, they say because the yadayim, the hands are askaniot. What does it mean, yadayim askaniot? The hands are travelers. They go from here, they go into places that are most likely not clean, a sweaty place, or whatever it is. So we can't say a bracha until you wash those hands. He says, but the tzaddikim, they would keep themselves in purity, and therefore back then they would be able to say. But today we don't rely on that. The only thing we allow to say, he says, is Mode Ani. Mode Ani is okay because again, the name of Hashem is not in there. All right, we have 4 more minutes. Let's try to grab one more thing. Bezat Hashem. Ikar hayom hu harishit v'atchala. It says the main part of the day, or how your day is going to look, is according to how you started it, the hatchala, the beginning. ולכן ראוי שיקדיש ראשית היום בעומדו בבוקר לעבודת Hashem, and therefore it is worthy that the first thing you do in the morning is serving Hashem. וגם מחשבתו הראשונה, not just the action, but even the first thought that you should have in the morning should be of how great Hashem is. ובחסדו, and how merciful He is. שעשה לו במה שהחזיר לו נשמתו, that He returned our neshama to us. We read this so on autopilot. Thank you, Hashem, for returning my neshama. But I heard Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Rav Ovadia had a son that passed away, and Rav Yalkut Yosef, big tzaddik, sadly passed away in the life of Rav Ovadia. Rav Ovadia lost 2 children in his life. This was one of them, this son, Rav Yalkut Yosef. All his sons, Baruch Hashem, they're all tzaddikim. We have the author of the Yalkut Yosef, the chief rabbi of Yitzchak Yosef, that wrote this. Rav Avraham Yosef, that was the chief rabbi of Cholon, Gaon Anak, Rav David, Baruch Hashem, they're all Gedolim, all of his sons. So the Rav Yalkut Yosef was saying, back in the day, we've heard people, he said, that went to sleep and are still asleep until today. It's not so pashut that you wake up in the morning. You have to burst with gratitude to Hashem. Thank you for returning my neshama to me. Bechazdo, thank you Hashem for the mercy. That's the modani. The most important part is how you start your day. We're starting with thank you to Hashem. Once you start with gratitude, Bezat Hashem, that continues the day on the right foot. V'gam halicha rishona, and the first steps that you do, he says, those steps should also be towards Hashem. And the first speech should be towards Hashem. So as we said, better not to talk secular things. The first thing should be talking in tefillah, talking on Torah. And the first doing should also be, okay, so we go to the Knesset, the driving the car is not the first action you do. This is one part of what you need to do in order to get to Beit Knesset. So of course that is allowed, but everything goes according to the beginning. Start your day on the right foot in a holy way. The Mode Ani, I'm going to Beit Knesset, I'm praying, I'm putting on my tefillin. After that, Bezat Hashem, the day will continue on that right foot. It says, Katan hayoda ledaber, a little boy that is already able to speak. Tov v'nachon le'argilo, it's good to educate this child, that since he's a little baby, to say Mode Ani, right? Once he's able to speak, even if he doesn't necessarily understand it, but get accustomed to saying these words, let them come out of his mouth. One more, Bezat Hashem. Whatever David HaMelech said in Tehillim, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, that Hashem is always before my eyes. This is a rule of Ma'alot HaTzadikim, a rule in the Torah of Ma'alot HaTzadikim, always to see Hashem before our eyes. ולכן, על כל אחד לשים ליבו, שהמלך הגדול הקדוש ברוך הוא השם, ולא כל הארץ כבודו, עומד עליו. Therefore, a person should always think that Hashem is the king of the world, the master of the world, is staring at him. Every action that he does. Moshe Ne'emar, he brings a quote here, if a person hides, he thinks I do not see him. That's the quote, which means Hashem sees us no matter what we do, wherever we are, he sees us. And once your heart is focused on that and you understand that, what comes with that? It's a package deal. He will be fearful from Hashem, and he will surrender his will towards Hashem's will. And he will have shame from Hashem. Right? Imagine that every decision you make in your life, before you make it, say, wait, what is good for me? What is good for Parnasah? What is good for the family? No, those are not the questions, he says. The question you have to ask, what does Hashem expect me to do right now? That's a high level, but imagine every question you have in life, that's the first thing you should think. What's the right thing according to Hashem's eyes? Right? Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. That's what David HaMelech says. Says, and he says, and if while you're thinking in that way that Hashem is looking at you, you still don't feel the fear from him. Some people, the heart is like a stone. It doesn't melt. It doesn't soften. Hashem is looking at me. Big deal, right? It says, Yeshuv b'tshuva shlema al kol avonotav. That means that there's a lot of avonot on his back, and he should do teshuvah. And those avonot are like a wall. They're like a fence, keeping him away from having the fear of God and being close to him. Right? So he himself knows what he needs to do and how to fix it. Right? Hopefully this is not relevant to everyone here, that I see all the hearts here, Baruch Hashem, soft hearts that want to serve Hashem better, and that's what we're doing here, Baruch Hashem. All right, gentlemen, Tizkul mitzvot. Great seeing you all again.
Thank you, Ziv.
All the best.
Thank you very much, Ziv.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.